Welcome, Queens, to another episode. I'm so excited today. I have a special guest with me. I'm just going to read her bio to you before I let her introduce herself. So I have Jillian Murphy with me, and she is a speaker, a writer, an educator, and a health coach. And she helps diverse, smart, and health-conscious people who are done with dieting get out of their heads and reconnected to their bodies. Jillian uses up-to-date eating psychology, clinical insight and guidance around diet culture, health and weight to teach individuals why they stay stuck in a negative pattern with food and feel constant body dissatisfaction, and how they can make the shift to find peace and to find food peace and body joy. So Jillian also works with parents whose children are struggling to eat properly. So whether that's they're unexpectedly fussy or obsessed with food, she helps parents who are stressed out by the fact that their kids aren't growing enough, or maybe they're gaining weight in a concerning way. And she helps these in a simple, practical, research-validated advice. And this work is perfect for parents who want to raise children who are a joy to feed, who grow well and have a great relationship with their bodies. So wow, what a bio. Welcome, Jillian, to my podcast.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful.
I love it. All right, so I'm going to fire 10 questions at you just to get to know you a little bit better. So feel free. Of course, if you don't want to answer, just pass, no problem. Sure. Where do you live?
I live in Kingston, Ontario, Canada.
Amazing. And do you have any children?
I have two. I have two girls. One is 12 and one is 10. And interestingly, they're in very different bodies. So it's a learning process in real life for me all the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
If you had a magic wand, what would you love to change about the world?
Well, at this exact moment, I just love for COVID to be gone because I miss my family. I think there's so many more things. Obviously, the work I do is about ending stigma, and specifically around weight and health. But then that extends into so many different areas. It extends into racism and ableism and homophobia and all those things. Which feels like a very beauty pageanty kind of answer. But yeah, I guess at the moment, let's just go with the COVID situation. I would just love for that to be cleared up so I could actually travel and see family and.
I'm with you on that one for sure.
Yeah.
Dogs or cats?
Neither. But if I had to choose, I would say dogs. I'm not a great animal person, which I hate. I mean, it makes me sound so terrible, but I'm just not. I just am not. But I'm warming up. The kids are on me maybe daily about getting a pet. And if I had to, I think I could maybe do a dog if I were pressed hard enough for long enough.
So if you was to choose between humans and animals, it would be humans for you.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
I love that. Sweet or savory?
Both.
Together.
Yes, together. So I love dark chocolate with some sea salt on it. Yeah.
So just literally before this podcast, ate a little bar of dark chocolate salted caramel.
That's my favorite thing in the world. Yes.
It was so good.
Perfect.
Have you got a favorite quote or a mantra that you either say to yourself daily or something that helped you along your journey?
Well, I have a handful of them, but one of them that just popped into my mind right now, and I'm probably going to butcher it a little bit, but it's from Ricky Gervais, and it's no one else knows what they are doing either. Because I feel like so much of my career, I felt like somebody has a secret key that I don't have. And I think that that's true in business a lot. If you're an entrepreneur, in life, right? Just imposter syndrome. And so I just love that so much. No one else knows what they're doing either. Just keep moving forward.
I absolutely love that, especially, as you get older. I remember when I was teenager, and you kind of think when someone's 30, I used to think that was old. I mean, I'm 34 in next week. And I used to think, when I'm an adult, when I know what I'm doing, nobody knows what the hell they're doing. They're just stumbling forward, and that's life.
Yeah, that's it.
If you could choose on holiday, would you have a relaxing holiday or an adventure holiday?
Adventure.
And this is a good one. Who is your ideal client?
A famous person, or you just want me to describe?
Yeah, so if someone was to come to, I mean, of course, I'm sure you help anyone who needs help if you get on together, but like, who would you describe your ideal client to be?
So my ideal client is almost always a woman somewhere between 30 and 60, 30 and 50, and she's incredibly bright, incredibly successful, has really killed it in basically every area of her life, and cannot understand why she cannot get this food and weight thing under control, because
Yes.
she is so great at everything that she does. And um, I just love working with that kind of person. Those people are challenging, like, because they're smart. And so I love working with someone who's going to really deeply challenge and question like everything that I throw at them, because I feel like the transformation is so much bigger when it's been
Yeah.
won, you know,
I
in a
love
certain
that.
way. So it can be and also the intellectualizing of everything, which I think is it's something I do for sure, and it makes me difficult to work with for therapists and counselors and coaches, because I can like intellectualize almost everything that I do. And so I love working with other people who also do that. It's a challenge, but I think it's such a fun challenge. It's a great thing. So I don't know if I've ever talked about that before, but I really love that about the women that I work with. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I love your answer. Thank you. And if you like to move your body, would you choose cardio or weights?
I love dance right now, which depending, like for the past, I say now, it's been the past 5 years, and this year of COVID has been hard because that's been really obviously a very challenging thing to do. But I've just started back with this small contemporary group that I work with online. Um, it can be a little bit of both, I guess, and sometimes neither. It's just this very like um it's a kind of movement that forces you to just be in your body and start to get comfortable with your body in lots of different
Mm.
ways. So I think that's what I really love about it.
I love that. I've just started only 2 months ago, actual, not erotic dance. It was just for myself in front of the mirror. I was in a group coaching, like around the feminine embodiment. And
Yeah.
one of the like homeworks was to dance. And I was like, really had this block. And I was like, I don't want to dance in front of the mirror every day. But now I do. Oh my gosh, it feels so good just to be in your body without trying to like be on show for anyone or to like be this person, force just to just move. So I get that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And last question, I'm so grateful that you're here, but why did you say yes to coming on this podcast?
Well, I love doing podcasts. I love this medium. I love getting to talk this stuff through. I think that like, we can read all the research papers and the books and there's just something different when you hear a conversation about this work. I think that, both have lots and lots of value, but I think that I love getting to talk about the nuance a little bit
I love
involved
that.
that's harder to do in writing.
Yes. And anyone listening, go and follow Jillian's podcast, which is called It's Food, Freedom, Body, Love, right?
Yeah, it's the Food Freedom Body Love podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's amazing. So go and follow that right
Thank
now.
you.
And also, because I'm deciding that everyone's like me, and when I'm listening to a podcast and then I'm hearing someone be interviewed, I always like to Facebook or Instagram stalk them whilst I'm listening. So although we're going to go through your details at the end, can you tell people how they can find you on social media in case they want to stalk you right now?
So Food Freedom Body Love on Instagram. On Facebook, I'm Jillian Murphy ND. I'm a naturopath, so it's Jillian Murphy ND. And my website is foodfreedombodylove.com. So it's fairly consistent except for that Facebook page.
Amazing, thank you. And I would love to start off asking the question, how do you personally define food freedom and body love? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I really like that question because I think that, when I named my work, I went kind of literal. It was quite a while ago. Now there's all kinds of people that have all kinds of different names for this stuff, and it's better understood. But when I started this work, there were not that, like, the body positive movement was not what it is on social media right now. It was about eight years ago. When I started the work, I can't remember when I started Instagram, maybe 6 years ago, 7, but I just felt like I had to be very literal for people. And sometimes particularly the body love piece gets misunderstood or challenged. So for me, food freedom is predominantly about two things. It's about being free of exhausting, preoccupying food thoughts, because that was, when I was in the thick of a disordered eating pattern, that was all I wanted. That's what I most wanted to be free of, was just this rolling inventory of food worries, thinking about what I just ate, worrying about what I was going to eat, this ongoing, incessant, exhausting thought process around food. So being free of that. And then the second piece of it is a deeper, like, not just being free of the thoughts, but actually getting to a place where you have discernment with food, meaning I am equally free to say yes to a food as I am to say no to a food. And that's kind of ninja level stuff in this work, right? It's one thing to start to move into permission. It can be hard, but most people will find their way into permission. But then finding your way back from full-blown permission into a place where you can say yes and no, depending on how your body's feeling and what your body wants. Not available to everybody, depending on their diet history and how deep and how far it's gone. But for me, that's like ultimate freedom, is having that ability to discern. So that's what food freedom is. And body love is, probably more aptly, it would be like body acceptance or body neutrality, or, even being able to forget about our bodies. Sometimes it's just about this disconnection of our worth and value from our physical bodies, and being able to enjoy the body we're in, and regardless of how we feel it looks, having the ability to care and respect the body that we're in at all times. So, that's a little less aspirational and probably a little too wordy for the name of my business, so I just sort of said body love. But I just try to always be clear that body love doesn't mean, I'm never sort of saying you need to think that your body is ideal or beautiful every day.
Yeah.
It's a little bit deeper and bigger than that. Yeah.
I think it's still a great name, because to me, body love, like if you think of the way you love your children, that's love. It doesn't, you're not going to like them every day, maybe. I don't know your children, but, for me, that means body love is like that unconditional love. So even if you look in the mirror and perhaps you're like, do you know what, I'm really not in love with my cellulite right now, but I love my body as a whole for what she does for me. So I think it is still a great name, if you ask me.
Yeah. I mean, that's the analogy I always use too, is this idea of kids. Like, I love them all the time, but that doesn't mean that we don't have struggles. It doesn't mean we don't have challenges. It doesn't mean we don't have really bad days sometimes, but I still love them. So yeah, that's totally the analogy that I use. Yeah. I love that.
And I love the food freedom analogy. And I've got questions around further down as we go. I've already wrote questions around what you just said. So I'm so excited to get to that. So I'm excited for that. So I would love for you to share your story and like how you are in the position you're in today, helping so many women. And, how did you suffer or struggle with disordered eating?
Right. Well, I'll try to make it, as with many women, the story is like long and we could talk for hours about it, but I'll just try to shorten it up, which means that I am taking some shortcuts. And I always hate when I hear someone's story and it's like, so I'll try to like make sure I'm clear about the parts that were really tough, but I'll shorten it up. So I would just say that for most of my life, like my childhood, had a fairly normal relationship with food. I enjoyed my body. I was athletic, so I had a confidence about my skills and about who I was as a person. It was clear very early on that I was not the cultural ideal. So I knew that, but it was kind of separated in that there was this culture out there of like movie stars and supermodels and YM magazine. I don't know if you had that in the UK, but like it was a teen magazine, that was constantly telling us how we should be.
Yeah.
And it was pretty clear that I wasn't that, but I felt like good. I felt good. I felt like I was athletic and successful and uh, attractive in my own right, I guess. And then through the sort of like late teen, early 20 years, things got really tricky for me. And essentially, I took a gap year and I went to England and I worked, and I became interested in naturopathic medicine. I kind of started veering off track from what I thought would be a medical career. Um, I returned to university after that year and I switched degrees. I moved into kinesiology. So I was in like a straight science program, which is usually recommended if you're going to go into medicine here in Canada. But when I opened up to this naturopathic medicine, I was like, wait, I can actually study what I really want to study, which is a lot less geology, a lot less physics, and a lot more sports and biomechanics and, you know, biochemistry essentially. And so I switched my degrees, and I was a soccer player for most of my teen and preteen years. And I switched at that point for a couple of reasons into running. And so I got into cross country running. So there was sort of this like confluence of events where I was doing less cross training, less weightlifting, a lot more running. I was getting interested in naturopathic medicine, where like the fundamental core of it is around food. So I was getting very interested in food and making some shifts to the way that I was eating. And again, this was way before there was any kind of like clean eating movement, right? So nobody really got it. It was like something that was kind of unique to me. It became a bit of an identity for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I lost some weight. I mean, I was a very medium-sized, again, athletic, if solid, person, and I lost a little bit of weight, and the response to me shifted really dramatically. And that really it planted a seed of like, oh my God, what did I look like before? Because I thought I was kind of okay. But this swell of feedback was very overwhelming, and it became very anxiety provoking pretty quickly because I was so terrified of like going back to whatever monster I was before, Um, so the interest grew and grew, and it developed into what we now call orthorexia, but there wasn't really a term for it back then. So I tried to get help. I tried to go to like the eating disorder counselor on campus, and it was like I didn't tick all the right boxes. And the, male middle-aged doctor that I went to see was like, you're just being healthy. And I'm like, I don't think so. Like my eating is so restrictive and I've lost so much weight. And I started to veer into like a new category of weight loss where then it wasn't being congratulated anymore. And people were like, ugh, you look terrible. And that was really traumatic and hard. Like there was this, I always say that it became clear that there was this very small window of appropriateness for my body,
Yeah.
and
Too
the
big, you're too
fear.
small, you're too muscly, you're too slim.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you're too skinny and it's gross.
Yeah.
5 pounds ago, you were perfect. 5 pounds before that, you were awful. And I'm just, those are not maybe the right numbers, but I'm just, as an example. So it became clear that it was a pretty slim window. So, but I was also, it was very hard, but I was very clear early on that I didn't like living the way I was living. I just didn't have a lot of resources to help pull me out of it. So, and then I got into naturopathic school. So I then entered into an education where food and really hyper focus on food was part of the education. And so I was trying to pull myself out of it while I was in this education. And I just say that there was, 10 years that were really tough, but I was like very slowly 2 steps forward, 1 step back, pulling myself out of a hole and identifying that there was a lot of pieces of food and nutrition and weight and bodies that I didn't get and that I wasn't okay with. I just didn't have all the vocabulary for it at the time. And so I went into my naturopathic with a very clear, like, I'm not going to be super restrictive with food. So I never, ever gave highly restrictive diets, like candida diets. I don't think once in my career I did that. At the same time, weight and health were still deeply entangled for me. I didn't realize it at the time, but they were. And so there were things that I was doing for lifestyle and for health reasons that were still very much pushing a thin is best agenda, whether I realized it fully or not at the time, which I didn't, I just didn't. And then, so I was, again, I'm glazing over years and years and years of work, of reading, of looking into things, of personally struggling with my own body. And to lesser and lesser degrees, but it was still something that was going on. And I would have thought that I was actually in a really, really, really good place. And then I had my second child and the weight like didn't come off the same way that I thought it should. And I started to go back down that hole of like becoming more and more obsessed with exercise and the foods I was eating and supplementation and testing and bioidentical hormones. And I just started to find myself in that spiral of preoccupying thoughts again, where I finally very quickly got to the point where I was like, if this is what's going to be required for me to be healthy, I don't think this is healthy. One of the things that when I was really in the thick of it in my early 20s, my running coach had said to me, Jill, there's nothing healthy about being obsessed with health. And that saying, those words, for me, it was the first time anybody had been able to identify the problem with what I was doing. And that has really carried me all the way through. So after that baby, I was like, there's nothing healthy about being obsessed with health. There is something going on here that is not correct. And what was going on is my belief that my body was proof that I wasn't healthy, even though the only thing that was different about me was that my weight was higher.
Yeah.
And so I hired...
It's not a mechanical biomarker for health, is it?
No. Right. And so that's what I was still doing. But that was what everybody around me was doing as well. Like I worked in an integrative clinic and it was fed back to me over and over again. Well, maybe your problem is this, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. No one until I ended up hiring a body image coach because I was like, I got to do something here. And if I'm honest, I thought that they would help me like let go of whatever stress thing I was doing and my body would go back to normal. But what I really got introduced to was this idea that our bodies change and that bodies at various weights are healthy and can be healthy when we're taking care of ourselves. And I got introduced to this idea of untangling and uncoupling weight and health and uncoupling worth and weight. And that really, I think I would say, like, I kind of describe it as like a knotted up necklace. It was like, it was like pulling on that one piece of the knotted up necklace is what just caused the whole thing to finally unravel. And then all of a sudden I had all the vocabulary that I'd been looking for like 10 or 12 years, like all those pieces that I couldn't quite figure out.
Wow. I love that. And going back to the necklace analogy, if you just try and pull a knot without, carefully, it just gets worse and you're never going to get the knot out. So it's about being compassionate, self-loving, like approaching everything out of curiosity instead of this is right and this is wrong. And I just love that so much.
Yeah. And so from that point, I fully immersed myself in the work for myself. And then, I was pretty far along this track. So I had been doing a lot of the work. And like I said, it was like this deepening, this final settling. And I had been really floundering in my naturopathic practice for many years. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, this is it. So within a couple of years, I had really incorporated this into my naturopathic practice. And then very quickly after that, I shifted into doing this 100%. So I let go of the general practice, started doing this 100%. And then I think it was in my bio, but I also started studying under Ellen Satter, who's written a number of books. I did an affiliateship, an associateship. And so I deepened into the work further in that way as well.
Yes. Wow. What a story. I know you've skimmed over all of that, but thank you for sharing. And how would you, and I'm going to ask you a few questions that I get asked a lot, and I'd love to hear your take on it. The first two questions, well, the first one is a question from me to you. The second one is like a client type question. How would you start off helping someone who is desperate to find food freedom? So they're stuck in the diet binge cycle, but they're, and I'm going to use this word strongly because that's how I used to feel, petrified of weight gain to the point where it literally petrifies them. How would you go straight into the every food is allowed, like, the allowance method, which is what I teach as well at the beginning, or would you take little baby steps? I'm just curious.
Well, I launch in pretty hardcore, not with the food stuff as much as those links. Like, when I say that there was this vocabulary missing that I didn't have, I hit people pretty hard right at the beginning with the research and the realities around weight and how that preoccupation with weight is the thing that actually leads to our battle with food. Because I think that if you don't understand it, even if you are resisting it and you hate it and you're mad at me for saying it and you're scared, I feel like if that seed isn't planted and understood, we can get really far into the work before the actual real work starts to happen. And I think that what I wanted more than anything was for someone to just like, I won't swear, but like effing explain this to me, and like, is it hard to hear? Yeah. Is it upsetting? Do people cry and get mad? Yes. Do they resist? Sure. And we might spend the rest of the time addressing that resistance. But I think that for me, in my opinion, it's a disservice for people to not understand the link very early on and why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I kind of go into it. Now, as far as the food goes, once that link is understood, I'm happy to meet people wherever they're at in terms of how we approach the food piece of it. Because it just depends on the person, and it depends how trusting they are of their own body. It depends on their history, the trauma, the resistance, and like that necklace, each person, I always say the problem is almost identical in every person, and yet it is like completely unique in that like where to pull on that necklace is really different for each person. So it's the food freedom body love method is actually a process. It's not really a method. And I can really come at that process from almost any angle, depending on the person.
Yeah, I love that. And the question I get asked most of the time is, can I lose weight and find food freedom at the same time?
Yeah. And like, the answer is basically no. And I don't mean that you can't lose weight, because the outcome is not in our control. So, I can have a bunch of women go through this process, and women gain weight, women stay the same. Some women do lose weight. But again, if we understand this link, it's the focus on weight that keeps us locked up in food issues. And so, part of the process, in my opinion, is being willing to put weight on a shelf as we start to sort through food and body image and all of those things, and being willing to put health on a shelf even as part of the process in order to relearn how to eat and how to approach food and how to connect to your body. And then understanding that ultimately the goal with the work I do anyway, the goal is that food freedom body love, not a weight, not a number on a scale. And so if you want peace, if you want freedom, if you want discernment, if you want to be free from preoccupying food thoughts, then we need to be able to do the work that is necessary to get there. And where your weight ends up, that's an outcome. We're not really in control of that, but we are in control of fostering different health behaviors. And that's where our focus is going to be. And then we can manage whatever's happening, how we feel about whatever's happening on the scale from that place. But it is a little bit of a catch-22 where the ongoing focus on where's my weight? What's happening with my weight? Am I losing weight? Can I lose weight? Am I going to lose weight? Is the thing that keeps people from being able to find discernment and peace with food. So how I get women to be able to set that aside is a little different for each person.
Yes.
But I would say that, it's just a little bit of a catch-22. Is it possible to lose weight through making peace with food? Sure. I mean, sure. Yeah, anything's possible. But it's also equally possible that weight will stay the same, or maybe even for some women, especially if they've been engaged in, ongoing restriction and diet cycling, I think it makes sense that your weight may go up as well.
Yeah. Have you heard of Isabel Fox and Duke? I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. So she was the woman who I originally hired many, 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 many years ago.
Wow. Yeah. So she's my mentor. So I've been through her program, and
oh, good for you. Yeah.
So we're on the same, I think we're in the same mindset, because there's a lot of different coaches out here. None of them's right and none of them's wrong, but we're on the same page, I believe. And I love what she says. She says that, your body size is none of your business, but self-care is.
Yeah.
So you can do all
Perfect.
the
Yeah.
things, like you can eat your vegetables, you can move your body, you can get enough sleep, you can take care of yourself, and then whatever your body decides to be, that's what she's going to be.
That's exactly it. And I worked with her before she had a group program. It was quite a while ago. She was just, she was established, but still, I did maybe 3 one-on-one sessions with her. And then I think once along the way, I did a one-on-one kind of like I need someone to bounce some stuff off. And she really did change the game for me and introduced me to all of these concepts. And I'm thankful and so grateful that I worked with someone who was so clear
Mm,
from the beginning
yeah,
about the links and the connections. And so that, I'm sure, has also influenced my approach, which is to be very clear very early on in the
yeah.
work, right?
Definitely. And I love one thing what she says, which is kind of what I want to ask you as well. And I listened to this the other day, and it kind of, I mean, I've heard it in a different way before, but the way she said this, it really resonated with me. So she's like, choose your hard. So you've got one option of, do you want to control, diet, obsess, to try and either one, stay small, or two, never actually get there, but keep trying to get there. Or number two, choose freedom, but then maybe experience like body image triggers for the rest of your life. But do you believe there's also a third option where you can be free? Like, obviously, apart from the odd, we're only humans, we're going to have ups or downs. But do you believe that it is like a choose your hard? Can you get true freedom?
I think so. I think again, it depends on, I mean, there's a lot of extenuating circumstances, right? Like, and I am aware of the privileges that I hold, as a white person, as someone where, through doing this work, I end up in kind of a medium sized body. Like it's a whole hell of a lot easier to find, um, and don't get me wrong, I have lots of days where I'm acutely aware of the fact that, it's hard to find it. I'm on that borderline where I fit into clothes at most stores, but then sometimes I
Mm,
can't. And sizing's not great for me in a lot of places. And I'm apple shaped. So there's a little weird extra stigma there around health and like
mm,
pants don't fit. And so I have little things, but I'm also acutely aware of the fact that like I'm white, I'm able bodied, I am cisgendered, I'm straight, I'm in a long-term partnership with a husband that I love and who loves me back. And like, I am aware of the fact that like this work is increasingly difficult depending on where your weight lands, depending on what the additional layers of marginalization are. If you are
yeah,
not in a relationship and you are looking to develop intimacy with someone, I had to go through that with someone, and thankfully it worked out. But it is hard when you're with someone and maybe it doesn't work out, or it is hard to exist in a world that still sees bodies in a very specific way and then have to initiate or engage in a new layer of intimacy with another human. So like, yeah, no, I would say like I think that for me, again, always working in the realm of reality is that of course I always hold the ideal, like the aspirational ideal of like finding a place where you are at peace with yourself, and truly more than that, I would say enjoying your body.
mm,
Like life is short. And what I most want, more than like for people to kind of get okay with how they look, is for them to actually enjoy life in their body as much as they can in whatever way they can. Like it's like very Esther Perel. I don't know if you know Esther, but she's like a couples therapist. But I
mm.
feel like her work and my work are very parallel in this idea of like eroticism as self-care. Like enjoying the world and enjoying your experience of the world in your body is the goal, not feeling pretty.
Yes, yes, yes. That's
So
why we're
Kate,
here, to experience.
right. And Caitlin Moran says this. She's a feminist, a little less maybe intersectional than I would like, but I have loved her forever. And the way she describes it, which is, the work I've done forever, but I read it in her most recent book. And I love the way she said it because she was talking to her teenage daughter about, um, that moment when you start to notice like, oh, the culture's like now living inside my daughters, not just out in the world, but it's actually inside
Mm,
them and they're applying it to themselves. And she was talking about that saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And she was saying, it's not your job to be the beauty. That's not your purpose in life. Your purpose is to be the beholder, to find beauty,
Oh my
to
God.
create a life that's beautiful. And that doesn't mean actual prettiness. You know what I mean? That means a life you enjoy. And, when it comes to teens, she says in her book, they so clearly just plaster the walls with pictures and photos and everything that they love and find beautiful. And it's like, that is often what I'm trying to help women reconnect to, is like, instead of trying to mold yourself into the beauty that is always up for judgment and always up for criticism and not getting it quite right and whatever, is to stop trying to be the beauty and be the beholder. And so in that sense, I guess it is choosing between the two hards, because there is privilege or an ease of life that is associated with a certain body that you have to give up in order to choose to be the beholder. And so, I do think that Isabel gets that right in a lot of ways, because it is hard. There are things that we have to give up and things we have to grieve when we decide, I'm going to stop forcing myself into the beauty or stop trying to mold myself into the beauty. And instead, I've got to accept these other realities in order to kind of move on and enjoy my life. But it's just, you're so much more likely to be successful at being you can be the beholder today. You can start right now. You don't have to wait for your body to change or for your life to shift or for, all of these external measures. You just get to do it right now.
When you said that, and I heard you say that today, I was walking and listening to the third one of your second series, and you said it there, and I just stopped and I was just like, wow, yes, that resonates so much with me. And it reminds me of something similar to what Summer Inanum, is that how you say her name?
Yes, Inanum, yeah.
And she's hilarious, but this also really resonated. You weren't born just to give men a boner.
Right. Exactly.
Honestly, until I heard that, that's what I was actually doing, existing to be attractive to men, because my whole life, I mean, yeah, it was probably, I'm not saying that poor me, that I got attention at school and all of that, but I got all the attention. And so I was petrified of not getting it anymore and petrified changing, because who would they think I was? And so I literally went through my whole life trying to be attractive for men, because that's all I ever knew. So that when she said that, it was like, really, I kind of was freed just from hearing that. Like
well, I mean, sexiness, desirability, all these things that women actually just genuinely enjoy feeling have almost always been defined through male gaze, right?
Yeah.
And so, even when I bring that Esther Perel concept of like eroticism as self-care, it's almost always immediately the image is heterosexual sex. Like it's like men finding you sexy, or it conjures these images, and the idea that it could actually be defined by you in a way that feels good to you, where I don't know, maybe you pull it all apart and then in the end you find that lingerie does feel really good to you. Maybe you never put another piece on for the rest of your life, and like that is not what makes you enjoy your body or enjoy the experience of the world in your body. And when we get away from that idea of like sexiness and desirability as a product of male gaze and male approval, all of a sudden we're open to like, there's just a million possibilities of the way to conjure those feelings and to exist essentially in the world. But yeah, it's a big one.
And I also believe that sexy is, if you feel sexy, then you're seen as sexy. I mean, not that it matters so much like what people think of you. Like I've really done so much work around that, and it's took a while, but I've honestly, I mean, I don't know if I would ever be 100% there, but I really don't care, because someone's going to look at me big, someone might say I'm too small, someone like whatever, everyone's going to have opinion. But if you want to feel sexy or confident, if you embody that feeling, no matter what you look like, people will see you as that. Like we all know someone who's bigger than us, who's confident, and we just kind of like, wow, this woman or man is amazing. And it's because of who they are, not because of what their body looks like.
Yeah. And I think, like, again, ultimately, if the goal is to enjoy life in your body, then, you have the ability and you can give yourself permission to conjure whatever feelings feel really good to you in your own body, regardless of how others are feeling about you or themselves or anything else in the world. Yeah.
I love that. It's coming back to self all the time, isn't it? And having that trust
Yeah.
of
Yeah. Yeah.
this is who
While,
I am.
yeah. While I always try to, while also understanding that the challenge changes depending on, again, those layers of marginalization that we talked about earlier, and never pretending that it's all always going to be easy.
Mm.
But that doesn't mean that we can't do these things for ourselves, even when it's challenging and hard and the world is feeding us back something different.
We can do hard things as Gwyneth, I can't think of it.
Glennon,
Yes,
Glennon.
Glennon, that's it. We can
Yeah,
do hard
we can
things.
do hard things. Yeah.
And we've got about 8 minutes left, and I really wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts on sugar addiction? And I'm not saying there is such thing as sugar addiction, but from what I've read and the research I've done along my journey, there's still a part of me that thinks maybe it's an actual thing. What do you think about that?
So I try to never talk in absolutes, but I will say that I have never seen it in real. And even as a naturopath, like, I think that first and foremost, it's too hard to know if it's a thing because sugar has such a bum rap and it is so highly moralized and so misunderstood, um, and so polarizing, that until we eliminate that kind of messaging around sugar, like, restriction sets people up to be preoccupied and obsessed with something. And
Mm.
restriction starts happening the moment we have that kind of a polarizing thought about something. I mean, I just always say to people, like, the reality is that every carbohydrate that you consume, which is a preferred source of fuel for the body, breaks down to glucose. Like, that's just the reality.
Yeah.
Biochemically, it doesn't look any different. Does it have a different amount of fiber attached to it? Maybe. Does it have different micronutrients attached to it? Maybe. But carbohydrates are macronutrients, they are nutrients, and they could keep you alive if you needed them to, right? So I
Yeah.
think that, like, it's very difficult to pull apart because as human beings, we are aware of the storyline around sugar, and that storyline fuels preoccupation. And so until we can ease that and loosen that, there's no real way to know. Um, I think that anything that makes us feel good could potentially be emotionally addictive. Do I really believe that sugar is this, like, um, physically addictive substance? I don't really think so. And I think that it's almost a moot point because we have to live with it and exist with it for the rest of our lives anyway. So the goal is to become competent with it, not to overcome an addiction. Like, that doesn't really make sense to me either. So I feel like I'm talking in circles a little bit, but I would say that I don't think that storyline will be easy to pull apart anytime soon. And I don't think pulling it apart is actually going to be super helpful to our relationship, because we have to exist with carbohydrates, which break down to glucose and are good for us in a lot of different ways. So to me, the question is not, are we addicted? Do we need to cut it out because we can't fully cut it out? Do we need to blah, blah, blah? The question is, how do we become competent with these foods? How do we learn to exist peacefully so that we can move through our day in a normal way without freaking out when we go by the Twizzler section of Shoppers or the pharmacy? How can we learn to enjoy food in a way that we have that discernment, where we can say yes and we can say no, and we're not beholden to food, right? And so that, yeah, I mean, we could talk about this for hours, but to me, that has always been one of the issues with those early kind of like 12-step programs around food, is that it helps people sometimes get a piece of the way with food, in that they stop the really strong swings with food and the really strong reactivity to food. But most people stay beholden to food in those programs. Not all, but most do, because they have to stay, they're constantly trying to control and resist,
Yeah.
as opposed to finding a place of peace and competence. And if if that feels good to you and that's what's available. But I try to hold a higher aspiration for more peace and more competence and more freedom.
That makes so much sense, because also, if even if sugar is bad for us, which I don't think it is, it's just sugar, it's just a macronutrient. Even if it was, how is that going for us? Just because we know it's not great, are we actually not eating it? No, we're binging on it because we're restricting on it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't
Right.
work anyway. So I love what you said about it's in everything. Unless you're going to be obsessed about growing your own stuff and that's it forevermore, or don't buy anything from anywhere because it's in everything.
I mean, a strawberry is glucose. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know, a sweet potato.
Oh, I love sweet potatoes.
Exactly. Lettuce, carrots, like they all break down to glucose. So, um, yeah, I mean, it's impossible to get rid of it unless, you're going to be on one of these like highly restrictive meat and fat only diets, which don't work for very many
No.
people and do actually trigger a lot of reactivity and can be highly inflammatory for many, many people. So is that even for health? Like, again, it starts to open up all of this conversation of like, what is it even for? And why would you even do it? And if we weren't so obsessed with keeping our bodies at specific weights, would we have such a battle with sugar in the first place? And I think that the clear answer is no.
Yeah.
So to me, it's just about coming at it from a really different perspective and then being able to work with whatever individual is in front of you. And if they have differing limitations, helping them find it and finding a way to work with that in a way that feels peaceful and free for them.
Oh, I love it how you always come back to the individual, because it's so true. Everyone has their own story, trauma around food. Like, yes, we're all in this place listening or watching this now because maybe we need help around it, but your story is going to be different to mine, to next door. All everyone's different. So I love how you have such a personalized approach.
Yeah, it has to
How
be. I
can
think
people
that's like, it's the hardest part about this work, but I think it's the bare bones truth. And
Yeah.
it's one of the reasons that I've always kept my work, even though I open up, I'm opening up more group work. I try to always keep a very high touch, hands-on um, feel in everything that I do, meaning that I try to have some one-on-one work in everything that I do, because I just think that people need it when it comes to this work. And I think that each person um, is going to have a different end point. It's going to look different. And there's so much value in having someone to talk that through with, to find your own happy place. Yeah.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to our call. I've reached out to Jillian and I'm like, I would love to have a call with you to bounce off a few
Yeah.
things, help me with
Yeah,
some.
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm vulnerably sharing that because we're not perfect, and yes, I'm extremely good at what I do, and my clients get huge transformations, but we're still only human, and it's this stuff is so deep layered within us. The more work I do on myself, the more I can profoundly help my clients too. So
And I mean, all of us, like it's this new series that I have on the podcast, working with practitioners. The reality is that we're human beings working with other human beings, and we are also up against a culture that is very hard on bodies. And even when we have done the work, we need ongoing support in the same way that we need ongoing support emotionally and physically, with movement and stress release. And like, this isn't just a one and done thing where all of a sudden you like hit this magical endpoint
yeah.
and you're good with your body forever and ever and ever, and it never shakes. Like, there's always more learning to do. It feels good to have support. It feels good to have someone who can help us get to the next level or the next iteration. And it also just feels good to have somebody to talk it through with,
100%. I'm
Yeah.
so excited for that. And how can people work with you? So those that are listening that want to, work with you, what are you offering at the moment in terms of group or one-to-one?
Well, I do some one-off sessions. If someone's just like, I just need to talk for a session. Mostly what I do though, is for those who are really struggling with food and body, like really in that early phase, I do one-on-one packages. For people who are a little further along in that, they're not struggling so hard with food and body. It's still there. It's still a bit of an issue, but they're really just trying to pursue health, especially for women at the point in their lives where their hormones are starting to shift and things are moving around. I have a hybrid program, Redefining Health, that's like part one-on-one and part group and part self-study. It's a really great program where we're really looking at like redefining health for the individual on their own terms, what it looks like to move beyond just a neutral relationship with food and into like a little bit more of that discernment and like gentle nutrition and making choices based on their bodies and their health and their genetics. And that is a really interesting, fun program. And then next month in May, I'm not sure when this will launch or when this will
In
air.
1 week, in about like a week on Thursday.
So in May, I'm opening up an 8-week intensive for practitioners and professionals. So to kind of make sure that they have the fundamentals, that they have some community and some support in this work. And then that will lead into a year-long mastermind for practitioners and professionals where it's like community and like high level conversation, like really getting beyond the basics and into bigger, deeper conversations about how to use food if we're going to use it, and like deeper conversations that are very difficult to have, even on like a podcast or in an earlier kind of group program where people are kind of in the earlier phases of this work. It's very difficult to have these like more nuanced conversations because people are at different places and we don't want to trigger people. And, but when people are in a more stable place, I think we need to have some of these conversations about health and wellness and weight and sugar and like, how do we start to open these up in a bigger way? And so I just really want to create that space for professionals, right? To find the community and the support and also some one-on-one time. So it's, right from basically the beginning all the way through to the end, there's sort of something offered for everyone. But that one-on-one Food Freedom Body Love signature program is like, my heart and soul. And then these redefining health programs for personal and professional development are newer. And I love them. And it's what I was looking for a million years and couldn't find. So
why not create it yourself?
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they all sound amazing, and you have been incredible. This hour is like flew by.
Yeah. I know. I
Unbelievable.
can't believe that.
Yeah, and I'm going to link, of course, as always, I'm going to link everything from Jillian underneath the show notes. So go and follow her, be friends. And yes, this episode is going to be launched in just over a week. So they'll be able
Amazing.
to hop on your anything that's happening in May for sure.
Beautiful.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I wish you a happy Easter Monday. As today we're recording, it's Easter Monday.
Yeah. Yeah. You have a great end to your weekend, beginning of your week. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, love. Thank you, Jillian. Bye bye.